Hey all, Mooch here, just getting set up, and we'll start getting some questions in here. Gotta fire up the other one. Hope everyone is doing well. Okay, there's chat with a nice delay. It keeps resetting the volume. Okay, hey all, welcome to live Q&A number 3. Me and my $3 reading glasses, and we'll attempt to go through a few things. We'll have to repeat this a couple times tonight, but well, first, the most important thing, I won't be doing Ohm's Law math for the vaping community. If you want to know lowest resistance for a particular battery or something like that, get the battery's rating, run the Ohm's Law equation, and you'll have the answer right there. Most of the questions, if they're anything like the ones I get written, links will be in the description for the replay. I don't think I put them there now because those links show up once it goes live on the excuse me, not live, but in the replay. But the links in the description to my blog at ECF, that's where the tables and the test reports are. You can get a lot of your answers there. For any question you have, add Battery Mooch to the beginning of it. That shows up on a nice red block in chat, and it's easy for me to separate which ones are questions and which ones are just you guys hanging out. If you feel your question is being unanswered or was skipped, probably because I answered it earlier. Based on the last Q&A, some questions were asked, I don't know, what, 7, 8, a dozen times. And you just go back, watch the replay, you should be able to get the answer there. A lot of the questions, if it's regarding batteries and mechs, ratings, recommended batteries, check out episode 2 of Minding Your Mods on my Battery Mooch YouTube channel. If it's about regulated mods, check out episode 3. And you get some recommendations and some ways to calculate how much wattage you can use for any particular battery. And let's see what we got for questions. Hey y'all. Anthony Andronetto, does the battery closest to the firing switch usually draw down faster? No, never. There is no, it cannot happen in any configuration, in any mod whatsoever, unless the mod was badly designed or is malfunctioning, drawing current through a voltage tap that it used to read voltages. By definition, batteries in series have to supply exactly the same amount of current. Now, what people may be seeing is every single battery is different. And so they're all going to come down, once they get down to a certain level, they're going to start to, one's going to start to go to a lower voltage than another. They're being discharged at exactly the same rate, but because every battery has different capacity, different internal resistances, one's going to come down to a lower voltage. It also depends, you know, how they're charged. There might be differences in between charging bays and things like that, but it doesn't. Oh, excuse me. So you don't have to rotate batteries or do anything like that. If you use an external charger, they get rebalanced, brought to the exact same voltage or close enough every single time you charge them. If you always keep your batteries in a mod and you're charging them by USB all the time, and there is then an imbalance in the way that the device pulls power from the batteries, you might have to switch the batteries around. But as a concept, batteries will always be charged at the same rate. It's just differences between them that might show up and gets you different voltages. Also, voltage displays in mods are notoriously inaccurate. Even a $5 Harbor Freight multimeter will be more accurate than any mod, except DNA mods, for reading battery voltages. Shagemaker 91, what is the difference between protected and non-protected batteries, and does it matter with vaping? Oh, yes. Protected batteries, and it all depends what they using the term protected for, but most protected batteries use an external circuit board that's tacked on, it's actually laid on top of or on the bottom of the battery, and they put new shrink wrap around it. And that circuit board takes a look at how much current is being drawn and the voltages, and will shut off the battery. Now that circuit board can only handle a few amps current. So for protected batteries, they're not good choices for vaping because they're so low rated. Now, if you're a low power vapor, or you're using like a 5 battery mod at moderate power levels, where you can split the power up between the batteries, then it might be an option. But because of that extra length, because of the circuit board that's sitting on this battery, it won't fit in most mods. So we use non-protected batteries for most of our vaping, which is why safety and keeping the wraps and all that associated stuff is so important because these batteries don't have it. Now, some batteries have protection circuits. Some have tiny internal protection devices called a CID, current interrupt device, or PTC, positive temperature coefficient. Fancy way of saying it shuts off, it gets hot. Don't depend on that. We don't know which cells have that and which ones don't. And I'm not going to publish a table of the ones that I do know, because people just go in and do all kinds of horrifying things with them, hoping that protection circuitry kicks in. That's stuff to help us out when everything else fails. Oh, so yes, it is important because they're too long, often, and too low rated. So unfortunately, we have to use non-protected batteries. Gregory Brown, is a PWM unregulated with a pot in series box worse on batteries? It all depends how hard they're being used. I can use a 300 watt PWM device with a 5 amp, 10 amp battery, or a pair of 5 amp batteries, and destroy them, vent them. So it all depends on what kind of levels you're running them at. And I'll probably do a video on PWM, but just for me, I just go, look, just assume PWM is set to 100% and pick your batteries for that. If you got a build on an unregulated PWM box, which most of them are unregulated, calculate the current that would flow through if it was just straight through, no PWM, and pick a battery for that. That way, if there's a failure in the circuitry or anything, your batteries can still handle it. David Hinton, best battery for hard hits on a dual parallel box. Well, go to my recommended batteries table. You can find it my blog at ECF. Link will be in the description, or you can go to my my Mooch Facebook page. But I recommend the VTC 5A. But check out recommended batteries. Maybe capacity is more important for you. There's no single best battery, but VTC 5As, 25 amps, give it 40 amps or so in parallel, because they're not going to discharge perfectly equally because of differences between the contacts and the wiring and slight differences between the batteries. And you can get an awful lot of power from that. David Hinton, just got to you. Mark Senior, when rewrapping your battery, are the sticky type positive insulators safe to use? Well, they're not unsafe. I use the sticky ones because it's a pain in the butt and it hurts. It's a pain in the finger to try to hold down the corner of the insulator while you've got this freaking hot ass hair dryer, or even worse, a heat gun. Oh, and you missed that and actually hit a finger. So I use the sticky ones. And safe or unsafe, that'll be up to you as to how you position it. Are they thick enough, etc. How much abuse your mod or charger inflicts upon the ones. But if you can get plastic ones, the ones I got were from IMR Batteries. I'm not sure, batwrap.com, I'm not sure who stocks the plastic ones now, but I recommend them over the paper or cardboard ones, because the paper ones swell up and soften a little bit if you get e-liquid on them. Other name 1000, anything about batteries for rebuilding power tool battery packs? Well, other than getting the right battery, it's hard how you're going to connect them together. Most of those are spot welded, so if you want to replace batteries in a power tool battery pack, how are you going to connect all those batteries together without a spot welder? That's one of the biggest problems that I see. But there's a lot more detailed stuff about that on YouTube, and through a Google search, you'll be able to see how other people have solved the problems. Go careful, go slow. Simon Davis, any good recommendations to 26650? Currently running Basin. Check my recommended batteries table. Anyone asked, what batteries I might recommend? Check the recommended batteries table. My blog at ECF has a link there, or you can check my Mooch Facebook page. There's a link directly to that particular blog entry. Anthony Adonetto, thanks man, you're a genius. No problem. Keith Black, thank you very much for your donation. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I actually got the plywood in, the $285 worth of plywood. That for the testing station, hopefully that's done within the week. I have 38 other small pieces of plywood coming in, so these donations will go for that. I don't even want to think about what the cutting fees are going to be. I'm just not good enough with a jigsaw, and I don't have a table saw to do the cuts. So custom cut wood, and but just cheap, just plywood. and I'm hoping it's less than another $100 just for all the cubby holes and nooks and crannies, so I don't have 100 pounds of equipment crushing on each other and I have some space between the equipment. But I'll do a video once the station is set, so that $5 is going to plywood. Thank you. Vapers Vault. I have an LG HS2, HG2. The insulator was stuck on, the bottom is dented easily. Fake, right? Well, I don't know about the bottom denting easily, but if you have any Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic, or Sanyo battery, and the insulator is self-adhesive or glued on, it is a fake, period. If the insulator is loose, the top ring insulator is loose, it might be genuine, but it could be a fake. So it's only if it's glued on can you say anything definitive, namely it's a fake. Michael McMickens, what do you think of the SX550 chip? No idea. I don't have a mod using it. I don't know enough about the features and details, accuracy, etc. DJ LSB Vapes would be fantastic to check because he does all those testing and he's fantastic with interface. Pete Posado, you could check also if he did a review of any mods using that chip. Jonathan Babor, will you make a video about temperature control on how they differ from wattage mode on battery draw? Probably not, only because there's so many algorithms or approaches to doing temperature control, and I don't have all the different mods and all the different ways of doing it. Temperature control can draw a lot less power than just working on wattage mode, but doesn't necessarily have to. A lot of it depends how you vape, chain vaping or not, what override joule setting or wattage setting you might have, etc. So just because I don't know enough to do it, I probably won't cover it. Now technically, if a particular mod has an interesting way, like the 250C chip and its replay feature, I might do something on that just to dive in and show how that actually functions. But DJ LSB Vapes will probably be doing that too. But otherwise, probably nothing on temperature control, algorithms, and power draws and things like that. Do you use, part 2 of your question, part 3 of your question, do you use the temperature control setting? And if so, what wire do you like the most? I don't use temperature control, so I wouldn't have any recommendations for that, but stainless steel is highly recommended, controllable, it's fairly safe compared to any other wires, and I'd say you start there. You can play with some of the other ones once you're a little more familiar with that. Daniel, how you doing, dude? You've got some videos to do, obviously, things I'm talking about. David York, greetings from Switzerland. Hello. Battery Mooch, how's testing of the new VT66A? Results were posted a couple of weeks ago. You can check my blog at ECF, my timeline on my Mooch Facebook page, and be able to see the results there. I'm doing a shootout between the VTC 4A, 5A, and 6A, namely, who's king of the VTCs, sometime the next week or two. Time has been non-existent, but I hope to do that soon. Battery Mooch, Gregory Brown, I'll be using Sony VTC 5As. Without context, I don't know how to add that because I don't remember where you were with the other questions. Anthony Cunningham, when rewrapping a battery, do you want the insulator showing a little bit? You don't want it touching the contact. I assume you're talking about where it comes up over the top when you're rewrapping. You don't have to, but don't let the wrap touch the contact, or certainly right up over the contact, because that'll just prevent the contact from touching anything. It's not that critical. It's better to go a little too far over the battery, not touching the contact though, than not far enough and have it peeling off too easily. Timothy Smith, have you done an episode on chargers? No, I haven't. I haven't had any time to touch chargers. I am so utterly and completely overwhelmed with everything. Things cannot go on the way they are. I'm trying different things, seeing if these Q&As take some of the pressure off from a couple hundred questions I get a day that I like to try to answer, but I'd like to. But right now I haven't even started testing chargers to be able to go in and make a video about them. Heavy Metal Vapor, thank you, sir, for your donation. Any update in the HomeTech 18650s? They are in the testing queue coming up soon. The Sherlock Home, I finished testing on, but I haven't looked at the data. I just kind of generated the graphs and whoosh, I'm off to the next one. The Home Life changed cells last year from the one that looked like an HG2 to one that is identical looking to a Samsung 30Q now, so I want to retest it. The Home Work still looks the same, but I want to test it to see how it compares to the HE2 that it used to be based on. Hopefully, well, I was going to say this month, but this month's over. Hopefully next month. Hopefully in the next couple weeks. It's a priority, especially since I've already tested the, damn it, these names. Sherlock Holmes. Was it 2700 or 21700? Anyway, the fat Sherlock Holmes one. But I don't think, answer your question, Heavy, I don't think there's been, if they've gone from an HG2 similar one to a 30Q similar one, they're certainly not in huge performance. They'll still both be 20 amp batteries. Their pulse ratings, I'm talking to them now about what that actually means. Pulse. TMS 420, is it okay to add a paper or sticker image under clear wrap? Well, it's okay as long as it doesn't make the battery so fat that the wrap is getting ripped or torn or doesn't fit into your mod. If you have to pound it into a tube mod with a hammer, I'd say no, it's not okay. It's your call. If you see anything weird, if something doesn't fit, if things are getting ripped, don't use it. But inherently, there's nothing wrong with adding paper under a clear wrap and jazzing up your batteries. Simon Davis, any tips on how low to run down your batteries before charging? Is it best to run them right down? It doesn't matter in terms of any kind of safety or something like that, but batteries like to stay around the middle. They like shallow discharging. They don't like to be fully charged. You can run them down at 2.5 volts every single time without damaging them. That's what they're rated for. No mod's going to let you do that. Well, the mechs would, but the vape would be pathetic at 2.5 volts. I usually say stay above 3.2 volts. 3.2 volts is about where most regulated mods cut off. That'll bring it back up to about 3.5, 3.6 when you put them back into the charger. You don't have to run them all the way down and bring it back up. It can be better just to bring it down a little bit, what's called do a shallow discharge, but not if that means holding them at 4.2 24 hours a day. But that can be inconvenient also, just to, let's say, charge right before you use them. It's always best, just not inconvenient, just kind of use them normally. It really doesn't make that much of a difference, especially considering how much we otherwise abuse them. I have one of my Minding Your Mods episodes is about extending the life of your batteries, and you can go through that, and there's some recommendations in there. Again, for anyone who's just showing up, if you need anything from tables, ratings, how hard you can run a cell, go to my blog at ECF. Link will be in the description, or you can go to my Mooch Facebook page. Add Battery Mooch to the beginning of all your questions, so I can see it in nice red. If I don't answer your question, odds are it's been answered earlier. You can go back and check the replay to get the answer. For batteries with mechs and unregulated mods, how to calculate current, recommended batteries, see episode 2 of Minding Your Mods on my channel. For regulated, see episode 3. Gregory Brown, Battery Mooch, bought 6 VTC5As from IMR for the PWM box. Okay, so call them the 40 amps. With 2 of those in parallel. Was it a parallel PWM box? Otherwise 25 amps each. And I bought it from the right place. They're great cells, and hopefully they work well for you. Jacob Hunt, thank you for your donation. Thank you very much. It's going right to plywood. I know that's boring, but this test station, which is looking really good. I would pan the camera, but I've got this duct tape monstrosity holding the tablet in place right now, and I can't get it over and get it back. I'll do a separate video, but all these donations really help out with this plywood. I need to be selling plywood in Manhattan because it's really good money. My stick figure. Mr. Mooch, thank you for your time this evening. Thanks for coming. Could you please explain the functionality of potentiometer? Yowza. Basically, potentiometer is just a resistor. And I'll do this quickly because always have backup markers. Where you've got current flowing through it, and what you do is you can pick, let's say this is 0 ohms, and I don't know, this is 1000 ohms. You can pick where you want it to take a tap off. By rotating the dial, you can rotate where you take a tap off of this. So I can be at 500, or I can be at 100 ohms, and that resistance goes to a circuit that determines how wide your pulses are. And essentially that's the pulse width modulation, or it modulates the signal, varies the signal by varying the width of the pulses, but keeping the pulses coming at maybe every 200th of a second or something like that, or 1,000th of a second, and then you're just changing the width to change the average power level going to it. So it's just a variable resistor. And if you always operated the same power level, you could just solder in a resistor and it would always run at that power level. I would say check online. There's some great tutorials and stuff available through Google and YouTube to get more details. Look up 555 PWM circuits. 555 is a very common hobby chip, even for some commercial products, used to create PWM signals, and there'll be a lot of theory based around that. Jonathan Boer, thanks for answering questions, everything you do. What about the green wrap on the mod with internal batteries that was from fresh produce? Oh, the SMOC stick, the V8 and the X8. I should be done testing this week. No big bad things to report. It's all been very boring. I have one of the burnt SMOC X8s, which I'll be examining this week, but I wanted to test and examine several V8s and X8s, which are identical. It's the tank and the button shape that differentiate between them. Internally the same, but nothing to report so far. The tape was just kind of funny. I guess that was the least expensive tape to use, vegetable wrapping tape, to fix wires down on a LiPo battery. GI 2985, can batteries of the same make and model discharge harder than others? 1 or 2%. If you have Samsung 25Rs and you bought 3 each from 5 different vendors, there might be a 1 or 2% difference between them. Now, if you get a set that's been in storage for 2 years and another set that was made 3 months ago, the ones that are 2 years old probably won't hit quite as hard. Will it be noticeable? I don't know. Maybe 5% less or something. Some people would notice that, some people wouldn't. But there should be very little difference between them, especially between Samsung, Sony's, LG's, Panasonic, Sanyos. They have very tight quality control. Their grading range is very tight. A grade, B grade cells are very tight, where the China cells use a much wider range of performance for any one particular grade. Vaping Computer Guy, thank you very much for your donation. Thank you very much. Mike Sem, what do you use to measure your battery temperature while charging? I use, is one within reach. No. I use an Omega 2-channel digital thermometer with Type K thermocouples. And you need thermocouples because you need that fast response time and the really tight thermal coupling to the battery. You can't use a thermistor. They're useless. And I strip the wrap off the battery. I put the thermocouple halfway down, Kapton tape it down so no ambient air can cool off the very tiny element. And then I note the maximum temperature. For some testing, I'll use a data logger that has a Type K thermocouple input from National Instruments. They have several of them, 6808, 6809 data loggers. And I can track the rise. I use that often for pulse testing for my clients because they'll do 60 seconds every hour, and they'll just want to know what it runs to, and we'll put it in a hot box, or I'll throw it in the freezer or something like that. Derfildo, do you have any future plans to test voltage drop over various metals used in mech mods? Yes, that's part of what the new station will be used for. I've got 60 amp electronic loads and 60 amp power supplies, 2 sets that I can pass 60 amps through any metal. I also have a micro ohm meter, so I can measure down to the millionths of an ohm, which makes for very tough testing because you can just slide the contacts a little bit and it varies 1,000 microohms. But using consistent testing and some careful methodology, I'll be able to test out some of that. Now, the metals, there's essentially no difference. It doesn't matter. The threads, the contact patches, the buttons, the contact shape, all that is 1,000 times more important than the metal you use. And I have a post about that on my Facebook timeline. And I think there's a link in my Facebook pinned post. John Whistler, thank you very, very much for saving our legs. Yeah, I was just reading it to say what was in Reddit. Somebody had a lawsuit about suing the vendor, and maybe the battery company too, for having change and keys and a loose battery in the pocket. But he had some bad damage to his leg. W. Brian Jackson, what does heat flux mean on steam engine? Essentially, that's a way of thinking is, what's the effective heat power that I'm delivering. The flux, like magnetic flux or heat flux, what's the heat concentration at that point that's doing effective work for me in vaporizing the fluid? And it's absolutely critical for getting the vape that you want, especially when you're comparing different coils, different wires, etc. If you go for the same heat flux every time, you can come fairly close, other than ramp up and ramp down times, between the different wires and different coils. And it's instrumental for a vapor to use to try to get equivalent or get to a certain point with the vape that they have, as opposed to just blindly applying power and trying. But that's easier to do, and a lot of people will just do that until they find the vape they like. AX, is reading for regulated mods actual amperage being drawn out of battery, or is actual amperage equal to watts divided by over current battery voltage? Almost all the mods we use, except for DNA mods, which were set, about 99% of the mods show you the coil current from the regulator, not the battery current to the regulator. So you can't use that. In a multi-battery mod, the battery current's a lot lower than the coil current. If you go check out episode 3 of Mining Your Mods, I deal with this and how to calculate the battery current. Unfortunately, we have to calculate it. But there's some rough things. 15 amps is 45 watts. 20 amps is 60 watts. Roughly 3 times the current gives you the voltage. Roughly. Check out episode 3 of Mining Your Mods on my YouTube channel. This is Mertzos. Or is it Isis? This is. I may not be getting both the S's right. Read W. Brian Jackson's comment. I have the same question. Well, he has to, if I haven't read it, he's got to put battery mooch in the front of it, and I have to be able to see it. So telling me to read something I haven't read, please, retype his question. If you have the same question, retype the question instead of telling me I have the same question. Please help me out. A million questions, going through a million of them. I'm trying to answer them all. If I skipped it, you can go back. Maybe I already answered it before you got here, but ask the question again. It might take 20 times before I see it. Soren W. I usually charge my batteries with a Nicore D4. Very slow. Do I get more battery lifetime instead of charging it with 0.7 or 1 amp versus 0.375? I found really much below 1 amp doesn't make much of a difference. Theoretically, it could, but most of our 15 amp, it depends on the rating of the battery. If you're using 10 amp or lower rated batteries, charge them at a half amp or lower. If you're using 15 amp to 30 amp batteries, 1 amp's a good compromise between battery life and charging speed. If you go down to 0.375, theoretically they might last a little bit longer, but we abuse them so badly otherwise that tiny benefit can get totally swamped by the harsh pulsing we do, or charging at 4.2 volts at a 4.1, things like that. You can try, I'd say you could try it, but it'd take 9 months to a year to find out. 1 amp's a good, if you want peace of mind, charge it at that, but otherwise I'd say 1 amp is a good compromise for most 15 amp or higher batteries. I have a charging rates table in my blog at ECF, and there's a link in my pinned post on Facebook, and a list of charging rates for a lot of big four, Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic, Sanyo batteries. Enrique Rivera Jr., if my Sony 18650 is starting to get a dent on top, should I disregard it? The dent? No. That's not good. See, it's hard because for all the manufacturers, there is no acceptable damage on these cells. None. No dents, no scrapes, no cuts, no rat damage. Nothing is acceptable. So I can't say, oh, that's okay, it's a little dent. I can't, because I don't know. I don't know how far it is. Are you interfering with the venting disc underneath? Are you using a hybrid top mechanical mod where the threads aren't far enough back so that concave contact on the top can actually reach around and touch the threads and directly short circuit your battery? There are a million things. Any denting is not good. That's all I can say. And especially if it's getting worse, don't use the battery. But I can't tell you where a dent is okay and a dent is not, because no damage is acceptable, and no manufacturer is going to test and quantify for us the how dangerous certain levels of denting might be for certain batteries, because none of it's acceptable. Let's see. W. Brian Jackson. I thought I answered that question. Battery mooch. How can you tell the different grades of batteries? as a community, we cannot, unless somehow we get to see the box, but no one's going to tell us. Through testing, but it might only be a 2% difference between grade A and grade B, maybe 5% difference, maybe between grade A and grade B. So it's really hard. Just vaping, I don't think we're going to be able to tell the difference. I think the differences from one day's vaping to the next, no matter how much we try to control it, it's going to be much bigger than any difference between the grades. How long can you store brand new batteries? They hate being stored. Batteries are meant to be used. I recommend rotating through all the batteries. You can check out my Mining Your Miles episode on extending the life of your batteries. I mean, a couple of years, you can probably store them. Check them every couple of months. You know, store them around 3.7 volts or so. Bring them up to 3.7. Check them every couple of months. A lot of it depends on the battery, how damaged it is. You said brand new. Some have a higher self-discharge rate than others. But it's best to rotate through them because they age. Every single day they're in storage. Drafildo, last question from me. Yeah, I've heard that before. Not from you, but from others who say that. And then the fifth time they say that. Are you ever going to team up with a mod maker to make a Mooch mod? Mods, no. That's all I'm going to say. Wes Cochran, it was the one about heat flux. The definition of heat flux, I went over that a little bit. You guys, type out everything in each question, because I can't remember your name and what you said earlier. But if it's the question about what is heat flux, I'd say do a Google check on that. Essentially, it's what's the effective working heat delivered at that point. I can't think of a great way to phrase it that would work. I'm not a coil expert and one on that, but it's, you know, equivalent heat fluxes from different coil types, ignoring ramp up time, will deliver approximately the same vape experience once you get up to that temperature. And it's really, think of it as sort of the effective power delivered to the cotton that's touching the coil. How dense, how strong the heat is at that point. 7 cheese pizza. What minimum thickness of wrap do you recommend for rewrapping? I haven't measured. Didn't know how to answer that question. I haven't measured any wrap thicknesses or anything, or no minimum one. If you have, it really depends on your mod and your charger. How much does it rip things apart, you know, or how much room you have inside the mod or charger for your batteries if, let's say, you double wrapped or you're forced to use a single wrap. So I don't have a recommendation. If you find the wraps that you're using are getting torn up too quickly and you don't want to change your equipment, your mod or your charger, then you might have to try to find a thicker wrap. But I don't have recommendations for any vendors for any particular thicknesses. I've been using IMRs, but I don't have any mods that really tear up wraps. So I haven't had a need to shop for thicker or stronger wraps. NGD, I like your keeps. I like your keeps from dropping. You're nice and perky. Whatever works for a broken bra. Much love. Thank you. I'm not sure I understand that, but thank you. X, Battery Mooch, thank you very much. DJ LP, thanks Daniel. Joseph, how long should you rest batteries after charge? Room temperature. You don't have to give them a fixed time. It might be, you know, I don't charge at insanely high rates most of the time, so I might wait 10 to 15 minutes. But just so you're not putting a hot battery into your mod to make it hotter. Essentially just let it come down. There's nothing electrochemically inside that requires a rest. I'm just letting the temperature come back down before I put it back in the mod and start heating it back up again. W. Brian Jackson, thank you for the plywood donation. Thank you very much. Warren Top, how reliable is the info shown on the screens of regulated mods? Well, battery voltage does not vary. You can use it roughly, you know, plus or minus 0.1 volts or something like that. The rest of it, some of them are pretty good at coil voltage, particularly the DNA mods. It really depends on the mod. Some of them do it much better than others. Battery current, you know, coil current and coil voltage, usually they're pretty close. Most of us don't use that though. The battery voltage, I wouldn't trust it more than maybe 0.05 to 0.1 volts. I'd say get a cheapo $5 voltmeter or use the charger voltage when you bring it to charge, which is a little bit better in terms of accuracy. Dylan Carroll, thank you very much for the donation. Apple Masim, is the dent in the did you ask this question for? Is the dent deposit of the battery affect the performance of the battery? Performance on its own, not necessarily, but if it comes down far enough to interfere with a venting disc, that can be a very dangerous situation, or it can cause a short circuit in a hybrid top cap mechanical mod that doesn't have a pin that sticks out far enough to handle that denting. Is it dangerous? Yes, it can be. No denting is acceptable. I can't tell someone, oh, this dent is okay and that dent isn't. Break time. As I drip everywhere. Daniel, thank you for helping out. David Hinton, how long should you use an 18650 before you replace them, using them in an unregulated dual parallel box? Well, it doesn't matter what you're using them in, vaping or non-vaping. Typically, if they start getting hot when you're not doing anything different, or when the capacity drops, because every time you use them, and as they just sit there, the capacity gets smaller and smaller. For like an Samsung 30Q or an HG2 used hard, every single time you use it, it might lose about 2 milliampere hours. So after 100 cycles, you've lost 200 milliampere hours, and some people might go, wow, screw that, and get rid of it. Others might use that thing till it goes all the way down to 2,000 milliampere hours, and they'll just replace batteries more and more often in the mod every day. So there's no set point. We can't use the last 300 cycles. We don't cycle our batteries fully. We don't bring them down to 2.5 volts. We bring them to 3.2, some people 3.5. So I'd say look for when they start to piss you off, or if they start getting warm, or always back to safety. This is about risk reduction. If they start getting weird, they start running wrong, if the rat's getting damaged, then you're not going to rewrap it. If they start getting dented, if they get scraped, replace them. They're cheap. They're dirt cheap for the year or two you get out of a battery. Just replace them. Mech Monster, so you're not designing a mod. Does that mean you're designing an atomizer then? No, not atomizers. I don't know anything about atomizers. Jean-Patrice Solari, semi-box let 2.7 low C, that bad for cells, long life terms. I believe you're asking if 2.7 volts is a problem for a battery for long life. No, they're rated down to 2.5 volts. If you ran them down to 2.5 volts every single time, they'd give you the rated number of cycles, assuming no other damage. They're not getting hot, you're not stressing the hell out of them at charging, you're not running them really hard in a mech or something at 40 amps insanely. So you can run them 2.7. Now, will you get slightly longer life if you run into 3.2? Yes. Or you can, if you're not otherwise abusing them. William Romero, I was just wondering if I had my Sony VTC4 1860, had them for about 2 months. They went from charging at half an amp to a quarter amp. There could be any number of causes. I would check the charger. Have you put them in a different charger and tried charging about half an amp? It sounds like you have some kind of intelligence charger, which usually just causes all kinds of problems with certain situations. I don't have enough information to be able to say what's going on with that. Sorry. Scott Bogfoot, seeing how these batteries are in everything, how many % do you think find their way to landfills? A lot. A lot. I think a lot of people just throw them away as opposed to recycling them. Worst case scenario for batteries in dumps and landfills? Well, they short circuit, they go into thermal runaway in the pile. Maybe it could start a landfill fire. It all depends what's in the landfill, and battery and thermal runaway next to a half-empty can of spray paint. That could be a nice little boom in the middle of a landfill. The electrolyte's toxic. The cobalt is carcinogenic, listed by some as carcinogenic, the cobalt oxide in lipos. So it's not a great thing to have in a landfill. It's better to drop them off at a recycling center of some type. Going down, let's see, how far by? 7:36. Oh, I'm not too far behind the questions. Shaker Maker 91. How do vendors get away with selling a 220 watt knowing the 230 amp batteries can't safely vape 220? Yeah, interesting about that. But when you think about it, the manufacturers from China say to use 35 amp batteries. So to them, yeah, I can do 220 watts. It's also, vapers very strongly believe that more number equals more better. Bigger number. Whoa! China has no reason to sell us a mod that does 150 watts, if they can sell us a mod that does 150 watts that says 220 watts on it. In fact, it might even be better from in their viewpoint, because they're going, oh, there are no batteries that can even do 220 watts more than a few hits. So hey, they're not even going to stress our regulator boards, and no one's going to find out it can't do 220 watts, except Daniel and Phil Bassardo and a couple others who are busting these, who are revealing this bullshit being thrust upon us by so many companies. But yeah, it's a big problem. You know, you get an alien at 220 watts. We're not going to, what? And even if you get a battery where you could, you know, you throw it in using a battery, what? You get 7 hits? And now you're getting a low battery alert, or the mod throttles back or doesn't fire? It's just bigger numbers sells mods. So for their point, China's viewpoint, they're just laughing and raking in the dollars by putting in the bigger numbers. Other name 1000, how people donate here. Down at the bottom, I believe, because they won't show it to me here for myself, there's be a $sign next to the point where you type in. You can do a super chat, quote unquote, donation there, or you can go to my pinned post on my Mooch Facebook page, or my any description in any of my videos, and there's a link to PayPal there. You can make a donation. Thank you very much. Mikhail D. Greetings from Ireland for bedtime. Have a wonderful evening. Sweet dreams. TMS 420. Everything I hear is not to charge your batteries in your mod. Is it possible to charge in your mod a couple weeks while out of town? I don't want to pack a charger. I can't say. It's up to the individual mod. It's not inherently bad across the board to charge in the mod, but there are some disadvantages to it, and some mods have had issues with that. There are safety issues with charging in it. They've had a relatively large number of failures. Namely, any failure is an issue, but it's slow. It ages the USB connection, which you might need. Those are terrible connections for repetitive connecting, and we're not real careful how we put it in. We just jam that thing, and if it's upside down, we go pull it out, and then we go, oh, okay, and we put it in. I can't say whether it's okay or not. It depends on the charger, it depends on the condition of the connection, the condition the mod might be in, whether it's dropped or not. I'd say if you're going to do it, if you're not, I mean, you can get single battery, 2 battery chargers. I mean, the little tiny things. I pulled everything away because of the work I'm doing in the shelving here. You know, it's a pack of cigarette size 2 battery chargers, a little bit longer. And you can charge it faster and safer. Any charging you do, device or outside, do it on a non-flammable surface and stay awake while it's happening, while you're doing it, particularly if you're doing it inside the mod. But I just can't say, because every mod is going to be different what the safety level is. Namely, it's up to the individual mod's design. NGD keeps from dropping is German. Battery Mooch keeps from dropping is German for bra. Your mic looks like an improvisation for a front snap broken bra. Aha, okay. Okay. I kind of like front clothes though. It's just handy. Yeah, never mind. DP Lewis II. You said that you don't vape around your equipment. That's why I'm not vaping now, because I got all the equipment running here and there. Is it safe to vape around a laptop or desktop PC? No! But is it an issue? Will it be an issue? It depends. Well, safe is the wrong question. No matter what, every single bit of what you exhale deposits onto something. There might be some water vapor in there, but most of it's just, you know, it's like taking a bottle of juice, put a spritzer on it, and just spritzing it on everything in your house. It's gonna coat. I mean, you see that in a car quicker than you might in an apartment, but after a certain amount of time, you're gonna see it go up to your walls after a few months, and there's gonna be a coating there. So is it good for it? No. Is it a problem? It all depends on your ventilation and how much you vape. Most of the time, you know, I like to switch flavors, so I don't like to come back into the apartment later and smell a flavor I had before and I'm tired of because I want a different flavor. So I'll just step outside. I'm on the first floor. It's easy for me to step outside. I was a stress smoker, so a lot of times I'm a stress vapor, and I want that break, so I'll step outside. And a lot of times my girlfriend doesn't like the smell of what I might be vaping anyway. She doesn't vape. So it's just, for me, double whammies, triple whammies of not smoking inside. But, you know, I've seen reports of people, opening up their PC, and there's a coating, dripping on the boards there. So I can't say it's good to be smoking in, but it depends entirely on your setup and stuff. I don't know, maybe if you have a laptop, open it up, take a peek inside, see what's coating the blades of the fan, if there's a fan on it. Is there caking of dust from juice that condensed, deposited on the blades? And start to get an idea if it's an issue for your setup or not. Matthias Ezekiel Sanchez, what's the deal with dual 1860 mott that advertise 200 and above? Are they real? Spoke about this a few minutes ago. Some can, I think, Daniel, you'd have to check JLSB Vapes and Pete Posardo's testing. I think some of them can do now over 200 watts, but not for very long. With two 18650s, not for very long. You think, at 50 watts for the good ones, you're about okay. At 75 watts, that's a lot of power for a single 18650, for single any battery, to get decent life out of them. Because this battery sag is so great, it hits the low voltage cutoff of the regulated mods pretty quickly, and even though there's a lot of capacity still left in the battery, it's just using them too hard. Marty O'Boy, Battery Mooch, hi. TMS 420, thank you very much for your donation. David Amonette, Phil Posado toured a battery factory run by a vaping company. That was Aspire? That was Aspire, because it was Long Delhi New Energy Company's factory, which Aspire, there's that complicated financial web between them. Did I test the batteries? A long time ago. They will be retested. They've been, I think they still have the 1800, 1850 mAh and a 2600 mAh. I've heard rumors their 18350 is out of production, but I don't know. I haven't checked. That's in the testing queue for some time this spring. Mike Sem. I periodically slow discharge and recharge my batteries in a hobby charger and track MAHs. Is it a waste of time? Well, not if you're tracking MAHs. It's a good way to see every few months how much your batteries are aging. They don't need it in terms of battery health to fully charge and discharge, but let's say you always use the battery down to a certain point in your MAH, or you put it into a analyzing charger or an battery analyzer that brings it down, charges it back up, and over time you can start to compare. You still have to make a decision. If you start with a 3000 mAh battery and it's reached 2800 mAh, that's not inherently bad. Where's your threshold for going, oh, I don't want to use it anymore? Is it 2800, 2600, 2400? But it'd certainly be useful to track the condition of them, and also to see if you're doing any kind of experiments, measure all your new batteries, use some of them hard in a mech, some of them gently. Let's say they're all VTC5As. Use some of them hard in a mech, some of them gently in a regulated box, and start to compare how badly one ages versus another, the difference in how quickly they age. John B. Is vaping around our TVs and other household electronics? This is related to the question I just answered earlier. It all depends how hard you vape and your ventilation. If there's no fan pulling in, this is why I can't vape around my electronics. They're fan cooled. If there's no fan, there's not a lot of, our vapor, which is not a vapor, it's an aerosol, I think, isn't it? Who cares? We vape. Getting down inside TVs and things like that, especially if heat is, convection heat is starting to come out of there. It's actually pushing everything. Oh, actually, it has to get drawn in from the sides to come out the top. Don't open up the inside of your TV. But for, other things, maybe peek inside with a flashlight and see if there are any deposits inside. We know it's not good. If it's an issue or not, all depends on how much you vape, the ventilation, and stuff like that. Marty O'Boy, how does PWM affect batteries and lower ohm builds? That's too general a question. You're really saying, how does the power we draw affect batteries on lower ohm builds, whether it's PWM or regulated or pure mech? It's how much power you're drawing versus the current rating of the battery. You need to pick a battery that matches the way you vape, no matter how you use it. Bob Boucher, thank you very much. Keith Wilson, used to set a PayPal me link in Nightbot to pop up every once in a while. All the people donating are paying YouTube. Yeah, well, there's so many things I should be doing. Thank you for the suggestion. I'm just getting used to using actual editing software to pull out all my ums and ahs from my videos. It's going to be a very long, I'm just completely overwhelmed. It's a good idea. I hope to implement it, but my PayPal address is in the description for all my videos. But thank you. Jay, do Sony VTC5A provide more amps than VTC4, even though it's rated lower? 5A is not rated lower than the 4. Check my table, my blog at ECF, or my pin post on my Mooch page for my 18650 ratings table. I gave the VTC5A 25 amp rating, the 4 a 23 amp rating. 5A hits harder. Now they have the temperature limited ratings, but the 5A has a higher temperature limited rating than the 4 does. So it's a little different than what you're thinking with the ratings on those. Miranda Jones, does leaving battery chargers plugged in even when not in use affect your electric bill? Extravagantly? No, but it's probably drawing a few watts at the most, 24 hours a day. I put any battery chargers, or I use power supplies, I put them all on a power strip with the switch on them so I can turn them on and off all at the same time, because otherwise it's a pain in the ass, because a lot of chargers you have to plug and unplug. That's a pain. So I just put them on a separate power strip and switch it that way. Aaron Jenkinson, are you married? Because I would like to marry you right now. Hoping she didn't hear that. Thank you so much for your donation as I slap the mic. Thank you. That's incredible. Holy crap. I'm going to have to write your name down on all the other plywood that I have to order tomorrow. Thank you so much. That's an incredible donation. I really appreciate that. Wow. Whoa. James Whiting, blew up my power supply on my desktop by vaping around it. Youch. It's not conductive, but it can. The problem with vaping is it's not conductive. Well, actually it can. It is conductive enough around some circuits where it depends on microamps of current flow. But there's a big issue. Hopefully you're okay, and hopefully the rest of the equipment's okay. But it's the tiniest bit of film, dust will stick to it. And as that dust sticks, it prevents that device from cooling off, and so it gets hotter and eventually it can fail. So that's one of the reasons why vaping around it or checking inside things, even with a little flashlight, looking inside to see if there's dust buildup, can be important. David York, what is your personal favorite mech tube mod? I bounce between everything. I don't have a favorite of anything. I like the Machina. It's not an astounding performer. I just like the look, and I like the matchy-matchy thing. And it's small, which I like. And otherwise, I like the Pulse, even though there's a lot of voltage drop in it. It's comfortable to hold. I'm trying to think of the others, because I don't have favorites. I just bounce between a whole bunch of different ones. Regulated, unregulated. I'll still go out, and use an Innokin T18 sometimes when I step outside, so I don't get yelled at by everybody for producing big clouds. A militantly anti-vaping block I'm on. Jack the Vapor, any juicy positive rumors you have on batteries as vapors? No. No availability things that I'll be able to get to anybody. Kind of a quiet time. Everybody was on vacation. I haven't had a lot of time for battery testing. I'm just overwhelmed with so many things now. And so nothing juicy, but I'm hoping it's going to be a pretty juicy summer. I'm hoping. Some tentative rumors I'm hearing, which I'm not going to repeat, because I just get in trouble when everyone goes, hey, but you said this and you said that. Well, yeah, that's what they told me, and they were wrong. So I'm not passing on any rumors yet. 7 Cheese Pizza, do you recommend taking off rings and rewrapping? Well, if the rings are damaged, yes. Otherwise, no, keep the ring. Keith Wilson, make sure the ring goes back on. Keith Wilson, you should get with a juice maker and bring out a line of Mooch juice. It's got a nice ring to it, but nah. It's just so much work. Battery-inspired label. 18650 juice, 26. All the battery sizes could be a different juice. If a juice maker wants to approach me and take all the work and give me the money, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But I think there are other opportunities to have my name associated with. Let's see. Do 18650s that we use for vaping have a charge-discharge memory? No. No lithium-ion chemistry, lithium-ion battery, LiPo has memory. That's only for NiCads and nickel metal hydrides, slightly. Nothing we use or will use for vaping has any kind of memory, and you don't have to do any kind of full charges or discharges to get rid of that memory. Yeti's uncle, howdy, sir. Your thoughts on whether the 2650 will ever take will overtake the 2700 in popularity. That's up to the mod makers and our community as we discover it. That right now, they're better than, as good or better than 2700s, and they are better than 21700s. But, if the 30T and the 40T from Samsung, the 50G, the Sanyo NCR 2700C, in addition to the A becoming available, then they're all going to be floating in this high performance area. But right now, I don't know. It's really, a lot of it's up to the mod makers and what they support, particularly with adapters. Checking the time. Angie D, what ohm range do you run your Machina at? I'm typically at a 0.13 cold, 0.17 dual fuse Clapton hot, or 0.17 cold, 0.21. I'll use a VTC 5A. That's good enough for me. The ramp up time's a little bit long, but that's about where I use them. It's still safe to use a battery with arcing. Inherently safe? No, never. None of our batteries are safe to use because there's some risk no matter what we do. It's like saying, is it safe to drive this car if I get airbags? No! There's always some driver on the road that can cause issues for you, or failure inside the car, something like that. All we can do is minimize the risks. Arcing increases the risks. Any arcing damage encourages more arcing damage because the slightly raised point concentrates the current, because now the contacts can't touch each other fully. They sit on top of those arcing bumps. So removing the arcing constantly is critical. Not arcing, changing contact shape, contacting the manufacturer, drawing less current, which is usually not an option, is something you can do, but get rid of the arcing marks because it encourages more arcing. It makes for more heating. Is it going to vaporize the battery or cause it to blow up? Well, not on the positive end, I'd say, but on the negative end, that arcing's damage is eroding down into the can. Now, I think it takes some pretty bad damage to eat its way through the can, but safe? No, never. And it affects your performance, which a lot more people seem to be interested in than safety. It affects your performance. Remove the marks instantly. Michael Inkraut, does my electric bill charge me the same for 1 amp at 2 hours or 500 milliamp at 4 hours? Yeah, because you're still at the same kilowatt hours, roughly. Better image. Sorry, I was asking about metal jewelry rings. Take them off. Oh, those kind of rings when rewrapping. Yeah, I would not have any kind of metal on my hands when handling, because all you have to do is slide your ring over the top of an unwrapped battery and you directly short it through a pretty thick piece of metal that can get really, really hot. And if it arc welds itself to the battery and you've got to try to snap it off, in the meantime it's glowing red hot next to your finger, yeah, I would take them off. Or just wrap some tape, a couple layers of duct tape around the ring, at least. But I would take them off, jewelry. And not rewrap on a metal desk. Norvin and DJ L Speeds. Any of you guys attending Vapor Expo in Birmingham? I won't be. I don't know if Daniel is. Yeti, am I the only one that's excited about the upcoming VTC 4A? I don't know. Seems to be a pretty good battery. When I have the 4A, 5A, 6A shootout, we'll see who wins that one. Leadlass, should you rewrap or double wrap when doing so just for matchy purposes? Well, that's up to you. Double wrapping can be an issue for some mods and fitting them, and some chargers fitting them in, so be aware of that. You don't want double wrapping to lead to more torn wraps because you're jamming things in and out. Hill Boston, recycling batteries, is it a state-by-state thing? It can be municipality by municipality with certain pickup, or do you package them in a certain way and put them in a recycling bin? Check, like here in New York, I would dial 311. A Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy have battery recycling bins, but if you're in a more rural area, you may have a local recycling area for refrigerators and electronics devices that may have a battery recycling bin. So you can contact Town Hall or in the city, 311, or get the information of what your local recycling center might handle. Or if Lowe's or Home Depot or Best Buy has a recycling bin in your area. 69 Camaro SS407, are the battery terminals coated at the factory? Yes, they're nickel-plated steel. So you can't just go sanding them Because if you go through the nickel plating, you expose the steel. Now that can rust. That's not inherently a problem, but now you got to clean the rust too. So sanding is just kind of an issue, which is why arcing is bad, because it opens up the exposed steel, or exposes the steel, which rusts, turns into high resistance, and in addition to the roughness, concentrating the current and increasing the heating, which encourages more arcing. Jack the Vapor, contact pins that have waffle-style ridges, will this cause more arcing? Don't know. So much of it depends on the shape of the battery contact and the shape of the mod contact. Batteries are not flat. So it really depends on it. If you're seeing arcing damage, that can be a problem. If you see a lot of arcing. If you only see one pin with arcing damage on the Dreamer, it might be all the current coming through that one waffle point, or it might mean all the other points are sharing the current equally and it's just in certain rotations of the battery. It's an issue. A lot of experimenting you have to play with to see what might be going on. But inherently, I don't know. So much it depends on the overall shape of that waffle pattern, the profile of the waffle pattern contact, and the shape of the contact in the battery. We'll just do it a couple more minutes here. Jay, why are battery ratings from manufacturers somewhat inaccurate at times? Well, Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic, Sanyo, they're all accurate for the criteria they set. Now, for the rewrappers, it's marketing. More number equals more, better. That's what our community feels. That's what our community believes. Over and over and over. No matter what I say or do, I get message after message saying, hey, there's a new 60 amp battery. This one could be 60 amp, right? And I'll go, no, 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 no. And then a day later, hey, this is this other one. It's a 50 amp battery. Well, this has got to be true, right? No. So it's just, it sells. And China knows that. And they don't have to be accurate because we can't touch them legally. Maybe start a little bit once the really horrendous regulations start coming in place in a couple of years regarding batteries and unfortunately probably juice too. Jake, Verno, are you going to National Vape Expo at Foxwood? Unfortunately not. I can't make Foxwood. I'm very upset about it. I'm very upset about it. 60 Wood Camaro, SS 407. Things are just insane here. Thank you so much. I assume so, but you know what to say about assuming things. Oh, yeah. Corey Turnbull, do you / how would you recommend cleaning contacts inside of a mod? Light sand. Alcohol can get rid of some things. I used scrubber sponges, Scotch-Brite pads, they're often called, or the green scrubber sponges for light arcing. That can work fairly well, but you attack it the first day and every day. If they build up, then it's not going to work. Now, sanding can work. You can sand off all the nickel, get bare steel, but then you just have to scrubber sponge it every day or sand it every day. And at a certain point, you're just like, phew. Sanding just creates metal dust, which is never a good thing to have accumulating under the battery or around anything. David York, thanks for answering my question. Great show as always. Thank you for what you do. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. And we're going to take 3 questions. And Gumasindo Jiboyo, was I even remotely close? Mooch, the new TAC 21 has metal burrs that are sharp in the battery tube. Would it be safe to sand them out? I don't know. I don't know anything about the mod, but that does not sound like a good thing to have. I'd contact the manufacturer about that, but I just don't know anything about where they are and what they might affect. Anything you might sand out, if you sand off the burrs, you've got to make sure that dust and the burrs aren't floating inside there that can cause a problem. 2 more questions. Well, John, you didn't say battery Mooch, but I'll answer yours. John Fersing Jr. Hi, Mooch. Have you had a look at the HomeTech Sherlock Home I'd mentioned earlier? Yes. It's tested. I still have to write it up, hopefully this week or next week, and get the results out to everybody. And then last question of the night, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're done. Everybody, I want to thank you very much for participating in tonight, and I wish I could have looked at chat and participated in chat a little bit, but at least, you know, $3 reading glasses are great to leave all around the house because who cares if they break anymore? And I break them constantly, which is why I buy the 3 for $10 reading glasses. But wouch, it's just not nearly as comfortable as the prescription ones. Thank you again for your donations, for your time, for your awesome questions, and for being part of this community. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to have to go around the back to turn everything off just because of the way my cheap duct tape tablet setup is. But thank you for watching.